Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into a time and place that feels both far away and oddly familiar. Imagine it. The faint glow of pre-dawn mist settles over the sprawling capital of Tang Dynasty China Chang'an, where tiled rooftops shimmer with dew and narrow alleyways hum with the distant sound of cartwheels and temple bells. Somewhere in that quiet, a rooster crows. A few candles flicker to life in second-story windows. And you're a government postman, rubbing sleep from your eyes as you swing your legs over the side of your thin straw mat. Your legs ache. Your lower back creaks in protest. You stretch anyway, groaning softly, because there's a schedule to keep and a saddle to claim before anyone else grabs the only mule that doesn't limp. You've got a long day ahead, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I always love seeing how far we all stretch across the map. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You rise slowly, slipping on your woven hemp tunic dyed a neutral brown. Just fancy enough not to offend officials, but humble enough to avoid attention from bandits. Around your waist, a thick leather belt creaks as you cinch it into place. Your mail satchel hangs heavy from your shoulder, packed with bamboo scrolls, silk letter packets, and something wrapped in oily cloth that smells like dried fish and regret. Each parcel carries inked characters denoting its destination. Some are bound for nearby villages. One is sealed with red wax, marked Imperial Eyes Only. That one gets special treatment. You make a mental note, don't lose that one in a river again. In a wooden bowl near your door, leftover millet rice waits. You wolf it down quickly, barely chewing. It tastes like damp wood and old socks, but it keeps your stomach from growling mid-route. Outside, the morning fog hugs the ground. You walk through it with the slow rhythm of someone half asleep but fully committed. You pass rows of tiled rooftops, clay pots stacked like sleepy sentries, and neighbors who nod silently, used to the sight of you before sunrise. A dog barks once, you ignore it. The stables are tucked behind the relay station, a complex of wooden buildings where messengers gather, sleep, and sometimes argue over who gets the good saddle. You duck inside, instantly hit by the smell of damp straw, animal musk, and something very much like fermented turnips. You're not sure if it's from the horses or last night's dinner. Your mule, Shen Shen, stares at you with half-lidded eyes. He doesn't move, doesn't blink, just chews something invisible and radiates judgment. Morning, you mutter, offering him a wrinkled carrot you stole from the cook's prep basket. He takes it, then turns his head away with all the grace of a disinterested emperor. You're not offended. This is your third year riding him. You've yet to win him over. The saddle squeaks as you heave it onto his back. A small, red, lacquered plaque hangs from the stirrup, the postal service seal. It's the only thing that guarantees people don't chase you off their land, or at least, that's the theory. Last week, a farmer still threw a yam at your head. Historians still argue whether Tang Dynasty Postmen were held in high regard or simply tolerated. Some say they were crucial civil servants. Others insist they were just glorified mule jockeys with better handwriting. Either way, the pay isn't great. But the view changes daily, and that counts for something. As the sun peeks over the distant hills, Chang'an begins to wake behind you. Smoke curls lazily from chimneys. Bells chime from a monastery far away. Somewhere, someone is burning incense and cursing the government in the same breath. You click your tongue, and as Zhanshan reluctantly moves forward, his hooves clop against the stone road, rhythmic and slow, as you ease into the first leg of today's route. It's peaceful, the kind of peaceful that only exists when everyone else is still asleep and hasn't yet remembered their grievances. You shift in your saddle and adjust your satchel. It's heavier than usual. A few packets are addressed to a silk dyeing workshop outside the city. Those usually include little bribes of pickled radish or candy for the station master. One scroll is wrapped in delicate blue cloth, smelling faintly of plum blossoms. It's sealed with a noblewoman's family crest, likely a love letter or request for extra peach wine. You try not to judge. Most Tang Dynasty messages were written on paper or silk using brush and ink. But the imperial post still handled its share of bamboo strips. They're durable, yes, but absolutely terrible to sit on if the satchel shifts the wrong way. You wince. Adjust again. On the edge of the city, you pass beneath a grand stone gate, flanked by wooden guardian statues, paint faded, faces worn smooth by decades of wind and offerings. You nod to them out of habit. You're not superstitious, but last time you didn't. A pigeon pooped on your scroll pouch, so now you always nod. The road ahead stretches into misty countryside, winding gently between mulberry groves and rice paddies. Farmers wave lazily as they till wet fields, their feet disappearing in knee-deep water. A few children shout "Letterman" and run alongside you for a while, before losing interest and chasing a butterfly instead. You breathe in the crisp, slightly damp air. You smell green tea leaves, fresh soil, and yes, definitely someone cooking garlic near a roadside shrine. Your stomach growls. Your day has only just begun. You keep to the left side of the imperial road, as tradition dictates. To stray to the right, well, that's for oncoming traffic or confused travelers. You once bumped into a retired general on the wrong side and had to listen to 30 minutes of unsolicited military strategy involving ducks, a siege tower, and 3 buckets of chili oil. Ever since then, you follow the rules. Your uniform, though simple, earns you occasional nods of respect. The Tang Postal Service isn't exactly glamorous, but it is official. The tunic's color and the brass badge at your chest signal that you're not just a wandering trader or a nosy poet. You're state-sanctioned. You shift slightly in the saddle, feeling a familiar lump where a stitched patch presses into your side. That's the mark of station number 12, Chang'an's 3rd outer courier relay, and the last place you got your shirt properly mended. The stitching's uneven, like someone tried sewing during an earthquake, but it's holding. Shenxian snorts and stamps a hoof. His tail swats lazily at flies. You know that look, he's stalling. Don't even think about it, you mutter. But of course he does. With a deliberate twist of his head, he veers toward a thicket of wild garlic at the roadside. You tug the reins. He doesn't care. He's a government mule and knows exactly how long he can delay without losing his oat ration tonight. So you let him nibble, maybe for 1 minute. This is your life now, negotiating with livestock. Once you're back on track, you check the satchel again, mostly to ensure nothing smells like it's leaking plum sauce. The Tang postal system was famously organized, with relay stations every 30-40 kilometers, but that didn't stop the occasional accident. You once delivered a scroll that reeked of eel sauce. Turned out the envelope had been used to wrap dried fish before being repurposed. The recipient was not impressed. You pat the seal pouch, where the red wax imperial eyes only scroll rests, insulated between 2 silk handkerchiefs. You take your job seriously. Mostly. The road dips slightly, curving around a low hill where lavender bushes grow wild. Bees hum lazily. You hum too, mostly out of boredom, trying to remember the lyrics to that ballad about the governor's daughter and the traveling puppeteer. Something, something, plum orchard, tragic sighs, surprise sword fight. A checkpoint looms ahead. It's a small wooden pavilion with a slanted thatched roof, shaded by a gnarled persimmon tree. 2 men sit outside, one fanning himself with a bamboo leaf, the other chewing a stalk of lemongrass like it owes him money. You dismount. "Courier from Chang'an," you say, presenting your brass insignia. The man with the fan squints. "Early," he mutters. "You people don't sleep, do you?" "Only on national holidays," you reply. He chuckles and waves you inside. Checkpoints like these serve multiple purposes, verifying credentials, inspecting parcels, or just giving weary travelers a place to rest. But mostly, they exist for one noble function: free barley tea. You sit cross-legged on the floor, accepting the cracked ceramic cup with a grateful nod. It's lukewarm, faintly bitter, and smells like something that was stored near a sack of onions. But it's tea, and it's free. The fan guy's name is probably Chen. Everyone at these places is either Chen or Li. He leans over, peering into your satchel. "Anything interesting?" 3 love letters, 1 suspicious invoice, a recipe for fermented turtle eggs, and something for the governor. "Recipes again," he says, shaking his head. "You'd think people could just pass those along at family dinners." You shrug. "Maybe the turtle egg guy's not invited." Chen, yes. Let's call him that, laughs. then sighs. You heading west? You nod. Next stop, Yunjin Hamlet. He raises an eyebrow. Roads muddy past the orchard. Mule might slip. He might also pretend to slip. You mutter. He's got a flair for drama. Smart mule. You leave the checkpoint after a brief scroll stamp and a snack of cold yam chips someone's mother packed out of pity. Before you go, Chen hands you something, a round, flat seed cake wrapped in paper. For the road, he says. It's either peach or disappointment. You thank him anyway. Outside, Shen Shen eyes you as if to say, took you long enough. You mount again, the saddle creaking, and offer him half the seed cake. He chews without comment. Historians still argue whether the Tang Dynasty's relay network rivaled that of Rome's. Some say the system was faster and more efficient. Others claim the bureaucratic layers slowed everything down to a polite crawl. One thing's certain, it was a marvel of logistics, with couriers like you forming the living sinews of a far-flung imperial body. Of course, the body had indigestion now and then. You cluck your tongue again, and the journey resumes. The sky is lighter now. The fog has lifted, and ahead, the hills shimmer with that soft golden glow that makes even donkey dung look poetic. You munch on the rest of the seed cake. Definitely disappointment. The road ahead turns gravelly and uneven. Xian objects. Of course. He stumbles over a particularly rude stone and stops mid-step, just to let you know he's reevaluating his career choices. You sigh. I get it. You mutter. You wanted the south route. Fewer hills, more turnip vendors. But the schedule waits for no mule, and you nudge him forward. Begrudgingly, he obeys. Within the hour, you reach your first official stop of the morning, a small checkpoint pavilion nestled beneath a crooked pine. Its wooden beams lean slightly, like an old man trying to hear a secret. A faded silk banner flutters overhead, marked with the character for relay, though someone's added a doodle of what appears to be a chicken wearing a hat. The station clerk, a wiry man with uneven sideburns and the aura of someone who's read every scroll but still questions everything, waves you in without looking up. You dismount, stretch your back, which pops like a distant firework, and hand over your official logbook. He flips through the pages, tongue sticking out in concentration. Everything in order, you ask. He grunts. You're missing a receipt for the UN parcel drop-off yesterday. You blink. That was a verbal delivery. Old lady didn't want to sign. She said the ink would curse her thumb. Convenient. She paid me in pickled lotus root. That counts as validation, right? The clerk eyes you, then sighs and scribbles a note in the margin, Lotus Root Exchange, pending confirmation of legitimacy. He stamps your logbook with a thump that sounds final enough. You're about to leave when he shuffles to a side shelf and pulls out a chipped teapot. You've got time for a cup, he says, already pouring. And of course you do. The tea here is barley-based, slightly toasted, with a whiff of ginger if you squint your nostrils. It tastes like wet toast, but warm wet toast, which makes all the difference. You sit on a crooked bench, sipping slowly as the clerk leans in. Did you hear, he asks, eyes darting left, then right. About the Empress's cousin's divorce? No. The price of duck eggs? No. He leans even closer. About the ghost that lives in the salt barrels up near Hanlon Village? You blink. That's new. He nods solemnly. They say he only appears when someone sings out of tune. Then I'd be haunted nightly. Same. You sip your tea, letting the warmth settle your stomach. The morning is mellow now. Crickets chirp lazily from under floorboards, and a breeze makes the wooden wind chime tinkle like a sleepy tambourine. Post stops like these are more than logistical hubs. They're gossip exchanges, unofficial newsrooms, confession booths with free beverages. You learn more about regional politics here than you ever could from a sealed scroll. Historians still debate how much influence these messenger outposts had on rural opinion. Some say postmen were accidental diplomats. Others argue they were simply repeating rumors, slightly more coherently than drunk poets. Either way, by the time you finish your cup, you know who's marrying whom, which village is hoarding fermented garlic, and who's been cursed by a cat. Refreshed and mildly overwhelmed by a local scandal, you remount Jianshan, who has been napping against a support beam, and continue westward. The gravel gives way to soft-packed earth as you enter a stretch of farmland. Terraced rice paddies spill down the slopes like watery staircases. The smell of damp soil and duck feathers lingers in the air. A boy waves to you from behind a cart of persimmons. You wave back and nearly drop a scroll. The road forks ahead, one path curving gently toward the river, the other winding uphill through groves of ginkgo trees. You take the ginkgo path. It's steeper, but less crowded, and you prefer the silence broken only by the occasional flutter of leaves and the squawk of a territorial magpie. You pass a group of farmers hauling woven baskets. One pauses to squint at your uniform. "Postman," he calls. "You got anything from my cousin in Angsa?" You check your list. Only a poem about a duck. That's him. You toss him the packet. He nods in gratitude, then turns to his companions. "He wrote again," he says proudly. "More about ducks." Poetry runs in that family. You keep moving, time is ticking, and your next checkpoint doesn't serve tea. They serve pickled radishes and unsolicited advice. But before that, you spot a shaded stone slab just off the road, beneath an overgrown cedar. It's been worn smooth by generations of delivery riders who, like you, needed a moment to sit, snack, and maybe debate the meaning of life with their mule. You dismount, you dig into your pack and pull out a rice ball wrapped in lotus leaf. It's slightly squished, probably stepped on. You eat it anyway. Shen chews grass nearby, clearly smug about the rest stop. As you eat, you watch the wind carry ginkgo leaves in soft spirals across the path. You think about that ghost in the salt barrel. You think about the poem about ducks. And you think about how strangely comforting it is to have a job where your biggest concern right now is whether you packed enough soy sauce. You pack away the rice ball wrapper, brush the crumbs from your tunic, and stretch your legs before nudging Xian Shan back onto the path. The ginkgo leaves stick to his hooves like golden confetti, and he flicks his ears in mild annoyance as if even nature is trying too hard today. You round a bend, and the landscape opens into patchy fields, low stone walls, and clusters of terracotta-roofed cottages. A few peasants stand knee-deep in irrigation ditches, fishing out wayward frogs. One of them raises a hand to wave, then trips over a hoe. You pretend not to notice, it seems kinder that way. The road here is split by a shallow stream, more puddle than hazard, but Xianxian treats it like a raging river. He snorts, hesitates, then performs the most reluctant splash crossing in courier history, leaving your boots damp and your patience thinner than rice paper. A small wooden signpost stands ahead at a crooked angle, carved with characters almost too faded to read. You squint. It either says "To Lotus Bridge" or "Beware of geese." Possibly both. The handwriting looks rushed, perhaps by a monk late for prayers or a scribe in need of a bathroom. You take the left path anyway. You've made worse guesses. The road narrows here, hugged by rows of bamboo groves that rustle like whispering gossip mongers. Somewhere overhead, a bamboo flute plays faintly its melody, weaving in and out of bird song, almost like a lullaby for the trees. It's oddly calming, until Genshin tries to eat one of the flutes. You tug him back just in time. Soon you begin passing the first signs of a larger market area, sheets of dyed silk drying on low fences, bundles of scallions stacked by doorways, and that unmistakable scent of warm sesame oil mixed with burning bean curd. You pause. Definitely burning bean curd. And there it is, a small roadside stall with thick steam wafting up from a metal brazier. The cook squat, broad-shouldered, and gleaming with perspiration waves you over. "Messenger," she calls. "You hungry?" You look like a collapsed umbrella. Tempting, but you know better. You've fallen for the just one bite trick before, only to spend an hour listening to a vendor explain his cabbage philosophy. Still, you dismount. "I've got 5 scrolls left and a mule who wants to unionize." You say, "Make it fast." She laughs. "Flatbread or dumplings? Which one won't leak through my scrolls?" "Neither." You take a dumpling. It's hot, stuffed with chive and mystery meat. You burn your tongue, but it's worth it. Shan, not to be left out, receives a wilted cabbage leaf and chews it with exaggerated disgust. As you chew, a boy nearby asks, "Are you the guy with the imperial letter?" You freeze slightly. Depends who's asking. The cook waves him off. He's been asking every rider all week. Probably thinks it's a treasure map. You smile, but your fingers subconsciously press the red wax seal through the satchel flap. It's still there. Still untouched. Good. Historians still argue whether the secrecy of imperial dispatches was honored or occasionally peeked at. Some say postmen were trained to remain fiercely loyal, Others suspect they opened them just to practice their brush calligraphy and resealed them with a half-melted wax candle. There's no definitive proof, just very suspicious handwriting in a few palace archives. You saddle up again and give the cook a coin. She slips you a second dumpling when no one's looking. Back on the road, you pass a cluster of musicians playing zithers and clappers. They nod politely as you go by, one raising a brow at your mule as if to say, "That creature carries imperial secrets." You nod back. He does. And also indigestion. The road forks again. To the right, a winding path along the riverbank. To the left, an older trail through hills, marked with another one of those confusing signs, this one carved into a tree trunk and partially chewed by goats. It might say shortcut or snake shrine. You choose left because why not? You've got a dumpling buffer now. It turns out to be both. You climb a gentle slope, passing stone statues of snakes with red ribbons tied around their necks. Offerings of eggs and coins litter the base. You tiptoe past, trying not to disturb anything. Jian Jian snorts again, this time louder. You swear he does it just to offend the spirits. But nothing happens. No lightning, no plagues, just the wind, the soft hush of trees, and the distant clang of someone very poorly trying to play a gong. Halfway up the trail, you spot a bent-over figure raking leaves into piles, murmuring to himself. Lost, he asks, not looking up. Probably, you reply. He nods. We all are. You nod back, like that means something profound. The hill levels off, revealing a wide plateau with breathtaking views of the valley below, terraced fields, blue-tiled rooftops, and a thread of river glinting in the light. You pause to take it in. Sometimes, despite the donkey bites, the gossip, and the persistent threat of being bribed with pickles, this job has its perks. You descend the other side slowly, careful not to jostle the scrolls. At the bottom, a narrow bridge stretches across a shallow gorge just wide enough for one rider at a time. The sign beside it reads, 5-coin toll, or 1 original joke. You reach for your pouch, then pause, and tell them the one about the imperial pigeon that forgot how to fly and got promoted anyway. The gatekeeper laughs. Go on then. Just don't try stand up in Luoyang. You cross, proud and scroll intact. The road is smoother now. Ahead, you spot your next stop, a tiny village post house, roof patched with mismatched tiles and a goat standing guard on the porch like he owns the place. He probably does. The goat stares at you like you owe it money. Its eyes, horizontal slits of judgment, track your every move. As you dismount in front of the village post house, Jinshan refuses to make eye contact. Clearly, there's history here. You approach the wooden porch, careful not to trip over a basket of yams or the goat's surprisingly muscular legs. The post house door is ajar, creaking slightly in the breeze, and from inside you hear a soft tapping brush on parchment, or maybe someone trying to fix a teacup with a very stubborn attitude. You knock anyway, because manners matter, even when your audience has hooves. A round-faced man appears, ink-stained fingers tucked into his sleeves. He looks you up and down like a tailor appraising a crumpled robe. You're late, he says flatly. I'm always late. You reply, that's why I'm early in spirit. He grunts and waves you in. The interior's dim and smells like aged paper, pine smoke, and the undeniable presence of pickled radish. Scrolls line the walls, bound in ribbons, labeled in what might be 6 different handwriting styles, all equally unreadable. You hand over 3 messages and receive 1 small parcel in return. It's wrapped in cloth and tied with a length of twine that's knotted in a way that suggests it was done either by a genius or a 6-year-old. What's this, you ask? Silk swatches for the minister's wife. The clerk mutters, try not to get them wet, or dusty, or wrinkled, so don't breathe near them. Exactly. You carefully stow the parcel in your bag, making sure it's cushioned between 2 scroll packets and not pressed against the emergency snack pouch, which currently contains half a dried plum and 3 mystery seeds. The clerk notices. Don't let the goat eat those. He'll hallucinate again. You turn to look at the goat. It burps. You move faster. Outside, the market is starting to wake. Vendors roll up canvas coverings, revealing baskets of green onions, jars of salted snails, and bundles of firewood shaped like disgruntled cats. An elderly woman waves you over, holding up a jar of something that glows faintly in the sunlight. "For aches," she says, or heartbreak. You thank her, but decline. Your mule is already judging your spending habits. You guide Xian back toward the main road, passing a group of monks with shaved heads and sun-faded robes. One carries a bell, which he rings once every few steps. Another carries a goose, which he does not ring, though the goose hisses as if tempted. You nod respectfully. They nod back. Even the goose looks momentarily contemplative. Historians still argue whether traveling monks like these doubled as informal messengers for nearby temples. Some scrolls mention monks delivering edicts or sacred texts between monasteries. Others say that was just a myth, likely spread by monks trying to get free tea and foot massages at every stop. Either way, the goose seems unimpressed with the weight of history. As you exit the village limits, you merge into a trickle of other travelers, a spice merchant with a donkey that smells aggressively of cinnamon, a charcoal seller pulling a cart full of soot and complaints, and two young girls herding ducks with more confidence than most army generals. One girl asks, "Are you the letterman?" "Depends. Are you expecting a duck-themed poem?" She giggles. "No, I'm waiting for a recipe." "Same thing," you reply, handing her a small scroll addressed to her grandmother. She runs off, waving it like a banner. The road winds through low hills now, speckled with wildflowers and that type of grass that always sticks to your socks no matter how careful you are. Xian brushes his nose along the trail's edge, searching for edible mischief. You stop at a roadside shrine, small, with a weathered statue of a smiling deity holding a fish in one hand and a scroll in the other. You place a coin at its base, more out of habit than piety. You mutter a simple wish: "Let today's mail reach dry hands." A breeze rustles through the nearby reeds. You take it as acknowledgement. Further ahead, you spot trouble. Not bandits. Worse. A cartload of overly friendly traveling actors. They're practicing a play loudly. One is dressed as a tiger. Another is weeping into a flagon. A third spots you and waves enthusiastically. "Oh, courier of destiny," he calls. "Join our tale of betrayal and dumplings." You smile, wave, and nudge Xian into a hasty trot. But they give chase. Not physically. Thankfully, they're winded from their own drama, but vocally. As you ride away, you hear, "Return the dumpling, you traitor." Xian speeds up of his own accord. Apparently, he has opinions on street theater. You breathe easier once the voices fade behind a grove of peach trees. A few petals drift through the air like theatrical confetti. The quiet returns. You slow the pace again. There's no rush. The next leg of the journey is long, but pleasant, winding past farmsteads, idle oxen, and sleepy water wheels. The sun climbs higher, and your tunic starts to cling with a light sheen of sweat. You sip from your gourd, tepid water tasting faintly of bamboo. Somewhere nearby, a bird calls in a pattern that sounds suspiciously like it's mocking your mule's gait. Xian ignores it. Professional, up ahead, you spot a roadside vendor with a hat so wide it might have its own moon phase. He's selling ink sticks and bundles of paper with slightly pre-written compliments on them, just enough space left for you to personalize it and seem poetic. You buy one for later. You never know when flattery might be more effective than a signature. As the path curves gently between willow trees and dry-stacked stone fences, you begin to notice the familiar creak of wood and the faint rhythmic splash of water wheels turning lazily in a nearby stream. It's the kind of sound that makes even your mule's sighs feel poetic, and then you hear it, the rickety moan of a toll bridge ahead. It's an old structure, sagging just enough to look mildly haunted. Two upright poles support a faded red banner that reads, "Crossing requires coin, credentials, or creativity." That last option always makes you nervous. A man lounges on a stool beside the bridge, wearing a wide-brimmed straw hat and chewing on what might be licorice root or a stick he's emotionally attached to. His dog, curled at his feet, lifts one ear as you approach but doesn't bother barking. It knows the drill. "Courier," the man asks without standing. You nod, presenting your brass insignia and your best "please don't delay me" expression. He holds out his hand. 5 coins. You offer 2. He frowns. You raise an eyebrow and reach slowly into your satchel, pulling out a folded scrap of silk, a joke scroll you picked up from that actor troupe earlier. The bridge keeper's eyes narrow with suspicion, but curiosity gets the better of him. He reads it aloud. "Why did the emperor ban garlic at court banquets?" Pause. Because too many ministers were leaking state secrets. There's a long silence. Then the dog sneezes. The man grins, pockets your coin, and waves you through. Go before I change my mind, he says, still chuckling. As you cross the bridge, it creaks beneath your mule's weight. Chen stops halfway to inspect a suspicious plank, decides it's not worth his energy, and keeps walking. Halfway across, you look down at the water, a slow-moving ribbon flecked with fallen blossoms and the occasional leaf boat left by bored children. A dragonfly hovers near your reins, then zips off toward the willows. You breathe in the scent of damp wood and river moss. Peaceful. On the other side of the bridge, the trail narrows and dips into a shallow valley, shaded by ancient cedar trees. The road becomes a patchwork of mud and flat stones laid centuries ago, and only slightly improved by time. Your boots are already dusted from the walk earlier, but now mud creeps up around the soles, decorating you in the unofficial uniform of the Tang Postal Circuit dirt, sweat, and mild regret. A short while later, you spot a small pavilion to your left, a roadside rest stop of sorts, usually unstaffed but often stocked with spare firewood, jugs of water, and once, bizarrely, a wooden chicken painted with eyes on both ends. You decide to stop, if only to check your satchel and stretch your legs. The pavilion smells like old incense and rain. A traveler's log is tucked into a bamboo tube at the corner. You read a few entries. Passed through with 5 scrolls and a broken sandal. Met a fox with the soul of a poet. Avoid the bean curd vendor in Nanping, trust me. You add your own note, still alive. Still allergic to overly dramatic geese. Shen nibbles at a patch of grass growing through the floorboards. You let him. He's earned it, or at least convinced you he has. Just as you're about to remount, a man emerges from behind the pavilion. He's dressed in layers that suggest either a scholar or someone who hoards scarves. His hat is askew. His eyes are far too excited. Yui shouts. You blink. Me. You're a courier. Yes, you can read, only if it's not in seal script. He holds out a scroll with a dramatic flourish. This is a poem. I need someone to judge it. You take it, scan the verses. It's ambitious. Something about moonlight, pickled radishes, and the betrayal of autumn leaves. It's evocative. He beams. I knew it. I'm sending it to the capital. You carefully roll it back up and hand it to him. Use thicker paper, and maybe fewer metaphors involving fermented vegetables. He nods solemnly. Wise. Very wise. Historians still argue whether Tang couriers often acted as informal critics, cultural commentators, or even matchmakers. Some scrolls reference postmen delivering love poems or settling minor disputes. Others claim they just nodded, smiled, and rode away very fast. Your experience today leans toward the latter. You mount Xian once more, gently guiding him back to the trail. It's early afternoon now, and the sun peeks through the treetops, casting dappled shadows along the path. The sound of birds has faded into the higher pitch of cicadas, who seem to believe they're the stars of every summer symphony. A breeze picks up, carrying the scent of crushed pine and something faintly sour, probably the nearby tofu fermentation pit that locals have politely stopped complaining about. You try breathing through your mouth. Ahead, a fork in the road. One path leads up toward an isolated hilltop shrine. The other, lower and muddier, cuts through a small farming settlement known mostly for its excellent sweet potato cakes and its unusually aggressive squirrels. You go uphill, partly to avoid the mud, partly to avoid the squirrels, and mostly because the shrine is your next delivery point. The path narrows into stone steps lined with moss, and your mule begins his ascent with theatrical sighs. You dismount and lead him, foot by foot, offering quiet encouragement and the occasional bribe of dried mulberry. At the top, the shrine appears wooden, weather-worn, but elegant. Red lanterns dangle from its eaves. Wind chimes shaped like cranes tinkle gently in the breeze. An old priest sweeps the steps with deliberate grace, pausing only to squint at you. Mail, he asks. Mail. You confirm, handing over a small packet tied with green ribbon. He bows slightly, accepts the scroll, and disappears inside without another word. You linger a moment longer, gazing out from the hilltop. Below, the land rolls in gentle waves, dotted with farms, streams, and distant rooftops. It looks small from up here, like a painted scroll left unrolled in the sun. You mount up once more, feeling slightly taller, slightly calmer. The next village is only a short ride away, but the sun is shifting westward now, and shadows are starting to stretch. You feel the weight of the satchel pressed differently against your shoulder. Arbeig Audubon Arndt. Still a few scrolls to go, still stories to deliver. Descending the hill is easier on the lungs, but harder on the knees. The stone steps are slick with moss, and even Shinajin treads carefully, which is saying something. He usually charges downhill like he's reenacting a heroic poem about runaway carts. You reach the base without incident. Save for a brief argument with a branch that refuses to acknowledge your personal space, you swat it aside, mildly offended, and press onward toward the small farming hamlet nestled between two low ridges. The air smells like wood smoke, pickled radish, and sun-warmed soybeans drying on bamboo trays. Roosters crow lazily, several hours behind schedule. Laundry flaps from second-story balconies like surrendered flags. You spot the village outpost ahead, really just a two-room building with a crooked sign that says Station 17 in faded ink. Beneath it, someone's written, "Please stop leaving rice balls in the suggestion box." You dismount, lead Jianshen to the shady side of the building, and give him a pat. He pretends not to enjoy it, which is code for finally. Inside, the air is cooler and smells pleasantly of parchment and pine ash. A sleepy clerk glances up from a game of Waiki he's playing against himself. He gestures toward the desk without a word. You hand over 3 scrolls, none marked urgent, but one smells suspiciously of camphor. He raises a brow. "This from the apothecary in Daxon." You nod. "She asked me to remind you to stop stealing her inkstones. Those were legally borrowed," he mutters, stamping each scroll with the village seal, a stylized gourd that looks less like a fruit and more like someone dropped a paintbrush mid-symbol. You lean against the counter and glance at the calendar on the wall. According to it, today is mildly lucky, excellent for travel, poor for haircuts. Good enough. As you step outside, a young boy runs up carrying something bundled in cloth. "Messenger, you forgot this." You frown. "I didn't drop anything." He unwraps the cloth, revealing a very confused pigeon with a scroll tied to its leg. "They said to give it to you." You blink. The note reads, "If you reach Huixi by sunset, release this bird with the reply. If not, well, may the gods forgive us." You squint at the pigeon. It coos, fluffs its feathers, and looks entirely unbothered. "Dramatic," you mutter. Historians still debate the reliability of Tang-era pigeon post. Some argue it was only used in military campaigns and by rich nobles with too many birds. Others believe common villages sometimes sent messages this way, especially in regions too remote for regular couriers. Either way, this particular bird smells like it's been housed next to fermented tofu, and you're beginning to suspect it might be holding a grudge. You gently place the bird back in your satchel, carefully partitioned from the silk samples and the emergency plum pouch. It squawks once, just to assert dominance. By now the sun is angling westward. Shadows grow long across the dirt path as you press on, waving goodbye to a group of children reenacting a battle with broomsticks and an aggressively dramatic cabbage. The road out of the village forks again. One trail winds through a plum orchard and loops toward the river crossing. The other shorter but less maintained cuts through a patch of open marshland known to locals as that place with the frogs that stare too long. You choose the plum orchard. The frogs can wait. The trees here are in full bloom, pink petals floating down like confetti tossed by sleepy angels. The air is sweet and heavy, and Xian swats at a bee with his tail. You pick a plum from a low branch, tiny, sour, and oddly satisfying. The orchard opens into a wide clearing where an older woman sits weaving baskets beneath a red parasol. A few of her wares are stacked around her, and one contains what appears to be a live duck, perfectly content with its role as temporary inventory. She waves. "Courier, you got my sister's recipe." You check the satchel. There it is, a slim packet tied with yellow twine and decorated with a hand-drawn radish. "Steamed taro with ginger glaze," you read. She grins, revealing only a few teeth, but all of them proud. "Tell her I said thanks, and that her handwriting's gotten better." You nod, tuck the message into her basket, and resist the urge to pet the duck. You've made that mistake before. Feathered creatures in this region are emotionally complex. As you leave the clearing, the trail dips into a shaded lane flanked by tall grasses and singing insects. The path here is uneven, and you guide Xian Shan slowly, scanning the ground for the occasional snake or, worse, an unguarded poetry recital. You reach a fork where someone has carved 2 arrows into a tree. One points left with the word shrine. The other points right with the phrase, definitely not bandits. You pick right, because you've already visited a shrine today, and because curiosity is the least fatal sin. The path leads through a grove where wild mint grows in thick clumps. You crush some underfoot, and the smell trails behind you like a very clean ghost. You pass a mossy well, a sleeping fox, and a group of sparrows arguing over a berry. Eventually, you arrive at a narrow wooden bridge that connects to a small hamlet hidden in a dip between the hills. Smoke curls lazily from the chimneys, and the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer mingles with the chirp of evening crickets. This is your final rural drop before turning back toward the main route to Wuxi. You deliver a small satchel to a man with ink-stained hands and 7 cats. He says nothing, just nods, offers you a pickled plum, and disappears behind a curtain of laundry. You're starting to think people in this region communicate solely through fruit-based gestures. Back outside, you lean against a stone wall, stretch your back, and pull out the pigeon. It glares at you. You sigh. Tie a new scroll to its leg, the reply, scrawled hastily on thin paper, and lift your arm. Good luck, you say. It doesn't answer, just flaps upward with all the majesty of a slightly disgruntled towel, and just like that, it's gone. You watch it vanish into the orange-blue haze of twilight, then mount up once more. Wuxi is still 2 hours away, but the road ahead looks kind, and the wind, for once, is at your back. You ride on, the sound of hoofbeats softened by the dusty earth, and the hush of evening creeping slowly over the hills. The air grows cooler now, with that gentle shift that makes your shoulders relax even if the day isn't done yet. Overhead, the sky turns that dreamy color between gold and gray, with just a hint of lavender where the mountains touch the clouds. Qianqian seems to sense the change too. His ears twitch less frequently, his pace steadies, or maybe he's just resigned to the fact that dinner is still miles away. You glance at the satchel, still a few scrolls left, the silk parcel, and the empty pigeon string curling sadly like a used ribbon. You tuck it deeper into the bag and push on. The terrain flattens out briefly, revealing a pine grove where the trees are perfectly spaced, like someone with a good eye for symmetry decided to plant serenity itself. You pass through slowly, letting the quiet settle into your ribs. Then your stomach growls. You glance at the sun, now hovering above the horizon like a lazy peach. It's officially late enough for a break. You pull off to a small clearing where a stone bench, cracked and mossy but clearly made with care, sits beneath a low-hanging cypress. You dismount, stretch your legs, and pull out what's left of your lunch, 2 pickled turnips, a rice ball now warm and a little sad, and a bit of dried plum that stuck itself to the wax paper like it fears abandonment. You sit, you eat, and you listen. Cicadas buzz, faint and steady. Somewhere, a bird whistles the same 3 notes over and over, as if auditioning for a mediocre forest opera. You offer a bite of rice to Xian. He sniffs, declines, and returns to examining a patch of dirt with great suspicion. Suit yourself. As you chew, you think about the people whose messages you've carried today. The lady with the green ribbon parcel, the duck poet, the ink-stained cat man, the monk with the goose. They're all part of the story, pieces of a grand puzzle scattered across hills, roads, and absurdly demanding toll bridges. Historians still argue whether Tang couriers had personal connections to their roots. Some say they formed bonds with the people they visited, remembering names, faces, favorite dumpling vendors. Others claim routes were rotated too often, that couriers barely had time to remember which village had the haunted millstone. You lean toward the first theory. After 3 years on this circuit, you can recognize a village by the smell of its pickles alone. As the last of the rice disappears into your slightly gritty molars, you lean back and close your eyes for a moment. The bench is surprisingly comfortable. Maybe it's the moss. Maybe it's your exhaustion. Maybe it's that post-dumpling haze. You don't sleep, but your thoughts do slow, drifting gently like ink in water. Then something moves. Not threatening, not loud, just soft, a flutter of feathers. You open your eyes and find yourself staring at a pigeon. Not your pigeon. This one's smaller, cleaner, with a blue ribbon around its ankle. It cocks its head, looks at your satchel, and gives a sound that feels suspiciously like judgment. "You're late," you whisper. It blinks, then flaps away, back into the pines. You shake your head and stand, brushing crumbs from your lap. Break time's over. The trail leads down into a shallow ravine, where a stream babbles alongside the road like a cheerful companion who hasn't yet figured out it's not being paid. You ride slowly, the sound of the water keeping you company. A wooden footbridge crosses ahead, delicate, elegant, clearly built by someone who liked angles and hated straight lines. As you cross, you see someone sitting on the edge, an old man, legs dangling, holding a fishing pole with no string. "Catch anything you ask," he grins. "Only the things I'm not fishing for." "Best kind?" He nods. "There's a frog down there who's writing a poem about you. Make sure he gets my good side." You ride on, leaving the bridge behind, and enter a stretch of low grassland dotted with wildflowers. Their petals catch the light, glowing briefly before the dusk folds in. Crickets chirp, fireflies begin to wink in and out of view, like the landscape is blinking back sleep. Ahead, a figure waves from beside a tree. You approach cautiously, but it's just a traveling vendor with a pack of dried goods strapped to a cart. He holds up a small jar. "Lotus jam." You shake your head. "No coins left." He shrugs. "Take it anyway. You've got that face." "What face?" "The I've been sitting on scrolls all day and my knees hate me face." "Fair." You tuck the jar into your pack. It smells faintly of honey and sorrow. Huixi's outer road appears at last, marked by a crooked sign and a carved lion statue with only one ear. The first homes are quiet, smoke rising from chimneys. A child plays with a stick in the dust. A woman balances a basket of leeks on her head and doesn't spill a single one. Civilization in all its quiet chaos. You turn onto the main street just as a dog trots past, sniffing everyone with professional disinterest. It pauses at Zhanzhan, snorts, then keeps moving. Your mule doesn't even blink. A seasoned professional. You pull up in front of the post station, a low, red-roofed building with a lantern hanging lopsided by the door. A man leans against the frame, chewing on a sprig of mint. He squints as you dismount. "Courier from Cheng'an." You nod, stiff-legged. "Good. You've got an urgent one." You reach into your satchel, fingers closing around the silk-wrapped parcel. You hand it over carefully, like it might explode into tea leaves and bureaucracy. He tucks it under his arm, offers a slight bow, and disappears inside. And just like that, your official duties for the day are done. Mostly, you stay by the doorway for a moment longer than you need to, hands resting on the saddle, the rhythm of the day still humming in your limbs. The sun has dipped just below the rooftops now, and Huixi is transforming traders packing up stalls, lanterns flickering to life one by one, shadows stretching like lazy cats across the cobblestones. The air smells of boiled chestnuts, pine smoke, and faintly blessedly of hot water. A bathhouse. Perhaps you entertain the idea for one long, dangerous minute before your mule interrupts the fantasy by audibly relieving himself near a bamboo fence. Reality reasserts itself. You lead Jinshan to the side alley beside the post station where a trough and a hitching post await. He drinks like he's been trekking the Gobi. You give him a grateful pat, more sincere this time, and remove the satchel from his back. Lighter now, but still damp in places where the rice ball did its damage. You'll air it out tonight. You lean against the post station wall and take a long drink from your gourd. The water's warm, metallic, but it does the job. Then you pause. There's a breeze now cool, sharp-edged, carrying a hint of rain that hasn't happened yet. It brings with it the unmistakable scent of ginger firecracker smoke. And then the clouds roll in. Not a storm, just one of those Tang twilight surprises, where the whole sky seems to sigh in charcoal and peach, promising either poetry or inconvenience. You pull your satchel closer, just in case. You're about to head into the post station to arrange your sleeping mat for the night, when the side door creaks open, and a young clerk pokes his head out. "You're the courier, right?" You nod. "We just got a late dispatch. Needs urgent delivery, can't wait till morning." "Of course." You glance at the horizon. Faint purple smears over the hills now. A few stars peek out, shy and undecided. The clerk holds up a small lacquer box, bound with red silk cord. No seal, no inscription. Destination, you ask. He checks a scroll. North Fork past the river bend. About an hour on foot. 40 minutes if your mule's stubborn. You sigh through your nose. Shenshin gives you a side eye that practically spells told you so. You take the box. It's light, but dense. Probably a letter wrapped in too much ceremony. Or a gift of tea leaves. Or dried ginseng. Or the most elaborately wrapped apology known to man. You mount up once more. The sky has shifted to full indigo now, and the streets glow with lantern light. You pass quiet courtyards, sleeping dogs, and windows where silhouettes move like shadow puppets behind rice paper. The road out of town is soft dirt bordered by low hedges. Cicadas give way to crickets. Owls take over the shift. As you ride, you notice something unusual: silence. Not the empty kind, the full kind. The kind of silence that feels like being wrapped in a blanket, woven from old songs and slower time. The wind hums in the trees, and the sound of your mule's hooves is muffled by dust and dusk. You follow the path north, the box tucked safely against your side. It begins to drizzle soft, almost polite rain that doesn't soak so much as whisper across your shoulders. You remember a phrase from your first training scroll: a good courier arrives unseen, unheard, and slightly damp. You're absolutely nailing it. Historians still debate how late-night dispatches were handled in rural stations. Some suggest they were rare and only issued during emergencies. Others believe they were used to test a courier's loyalty or endurance. A sort of postal rite of passage. You ride on, the path narrowing to a single worn track between rows of whispering reeds. Fireflies drift around you in glowing commas, their sentences unfinished. You try not to inhale one. The river appears suddenly, revealed by the glint of moonlight off slow-moving water. A simple wooden bridge crosses its rope railings, damp planks, and a single lantern dangling from a post at its center. You cross it slowly. The wind ripples across the surface of the water, carrying smells of clay and mint and silt. Xianjian hesitates in the middle of the bridge, not spooked, just dramatic. You nudge him forward, and the moment passes. Beyond the bridge, a small hut emerges at the edge of a tea field. A single candle glows in the window. A figure steps out as you approach a woman in a gray robe, her hair tied up with a red cord that matches the one around your parcel. She doesn't speak. She simply holds out her hand. You dismount, place the lacquer box gently into her palm, and bow slightly. She returns the gesture with quiet dignity, then turns and disappears into the hut without a word. You're left standing there. The only sound, the gentle rustle of tea leaves in the wind. Delivery complete. You turn Xian back toward the river. The rain has stopped. The clouds have cleared. The moon is brighter now, nearly full. It casts silver shadows across the fields and gives the world a soft outline, like it's been gently redrawn in chalk. You ride slowly, no rush now. The road back to Huichi is quiet, and you welcome the silence. Back in town, the lanterns burn lower, and even the night dogs have curled into tight, satisfied circles. You reach the post station, untack Xian for the last time today, and brush his coat with half-hearted efficiency. He doesn't mind. He's already falling asleep, ears twitching with mule dreams. Inside, the post station is dark and still. A single candle waits beside a folded mat. You sink onto it with a groan, legs grateful, shoulders complaining. The satchel rests beside you, now empty, slightly damp, but unbroken. A day's worth of stories, delivered, and no one died from the pickled radish this time. Progress. You wake before dawn again, not because anyone asked you to, but because your back has decided you've had enough sleep. The straw mat is thin, the candle has burned out, and your leg is tangled in your satchel strap like it tried to escape overnight. Chin is already awake outside, standing perfectly still, eyes closed, pretending to be a statue. Whether it's discipline or passive-aggressive protest, you're not sure. You shuffle outside into the quiet courtyard behind the post station. The sky is still deep navy, not yet touched by the first hints of color. A light mist curls low across the ground, wrapping itself around stone steps and half-empty water jars. You stretch, bones clicking in time with the crickets. You're not on official duty this morning. No scheduled runs, no seal-marked scrolls burning a hole in your pouch, but habit has its grip on you now. Besides, The station clerk mentioned last night that a minor local official was expecting a private message. You offered, of course, because you can't sit still, and because it pays in hot breakfast. You collect the scroll, a small, neatly tied message with an elegant seal, not imperial, but noble enough to make you adjust your posture out of sheer muscle memory. Destination A, nearby compound on the edge of town. A short ride, but long enough for something weird to happen. You saddle up, and Xian grumbles the whole way, pausing dramatically at every third step like a tragic actor from a traveling theater troupe. Keep it up, you mutter, and I'll write you into a scroll as a cautionary tale. He flicks his tail in reply, possibly profanity. The compound appears just outside Huaxi's western gate, high stone walls, tiled roof, and a red paper lantern still glowing faintly from the night before. 2 guards in stiff robes glance at you, then at each other, then at the scroll. Messenger. Usually, they gesture you inside. The courtyard is immaculate raked gravel, stone lanterns, and potted plum trees shaped into perfect, poetic spirals. Birds chirp like they're being paid by the note. Somewhere in the background, someone is plucking a guqin soft notes echoing with just enough melancholy to suggest a recent romantic disappointment. A servant meets you at the steps. You bow. They bow lower. This continues until someone makes a polite coughing noise from the doorway, and the cycle breaks. You hand over the scroll. Wait here, the servant says, vanishing through a beaded curtain. You're left standing beside a koi pond. The fish ignore you. Minutes pass, possibly hours. Time stretches like warm tofu. Then, finally, the servant returns not with payment or thanks, but with a small, oddly shaped bundle wrapped in pale silk. The magistrate asks that you deliver this to the temple near Pine Ridge. He says, discreetly, of course. You take it, nod, and exit the way you came. The guards barely glance at you this time, which is either respect or resignation. Back on the road, you examine the bundle. It's small, not heavy, but the fabric is finer than anything you've touched in weeks. It smells faintly of sandalwood, and what is that apricot mystery? You wrap it tighter and tuck it between 2 layers of cloth in your satchel. As you ride toward Pine Ridge, the town fades behind you, and farmland resumes its quiet hold on the land. Smoke drifts lazily from morning cook fires. A rooster crows, then coughs. You consider recommending him some ginger tea. The path grows narrower and less maintained. Grasses reclaim the edges, and the stones grow more ambitious in their attempts to trip you. Jianxian weaves around them with surprising grace, like he's suddenly remembered he has legs. You pass a man herding ducks with a reed flute. The ducks follow in perfect formation. You tip your head in admiration. He nods back, eyes serious. This is clearly a sacred bond. The temple comes into view just past a bend, a weather-worn structure nestled among pines, its roof dusted with needles and time. Wind chimes made of carved bamboo tinkle gently in the breeze. You dismount, tread carefully. A young monk meets you at the gate. You bow. He bows. It's happening again. You hold up the silk bundle. For the abbot, you say softly. The monk nods and takes it without opening it. No questions. Just a knowing look and another bow. You're offered tea light, floral, served in a cup that's clearly been used by 1,000 hands and still hasn't chipped. You sit in the outer courtyard, sipping slowly, watching 2 cats stalk a butterfly with the focus of scholars preparing for exams. You don't ask what was in the bundle. You don't need to know. Historians still debate the role couriers played in discreet diplomacy. Some argue they were mere errand runners. Others believe they were trusted intermediaries, bearers of secrets that never made it into official records. Perhaps both are true. Perhaps it depended on the day and the mule. When you leave the temple, the wind picks up, rustling the pine needles in a low, whispering hum. You pull your cloak tighter and ride downhill slowly, savoring the quiet. Back on the main road, you pass a traveling troupe of musicians playing something cheerful and slightly off-key. A child with bells tied to their ankles dances in circles. A vendor offers sweet buns from a cart shaped like a rabbit. You buy one. It's warm. It tastes like honey, ginger, and sleep deprivation. You return to Huixi just as the mid-morning sun breaks through the clouds, lighting the town in soft gold. The smell of steam buns drifts through the air. Someone nearby is burning incense. Someone else is arguing with a chicken. And you're done with scrolls. For now. The rest of the morning unspools like silk, smooth, slow, and just slightly tangled around the edges. With your satchel finally empty, you allow yourself a few luxuries. First, a real breakfast, not a leftover rice ball, not half a pickled turnip. A bowl of noodles with broth so rich, it tastes like it studied for an imperial exam. You slurp quietly, seated on a low stool beneath a red awning just off Huixi's main market lane. Around you, the town hums with its usual coarse vendors, hawking dried fish and textiles, grandmothers squabbling over radish prices, a baby loudly discovering its own feet. You lean back, let the warmth of the soup settle into your chest, and briefly consider a nap. But the station clerk finds you first. He appears like a summoned ghost, smelling faintly of ink and damp paper, and holds out a folded slip of parchment. "You're still here?" he asks, like he thought you dissolved into mist. "I've only just finished chewing." He shrugs. "This one's not urgent, but it's local. If you've got the time, you take the slip. It's addressed to a minor noble family near the Southern Orchard Road, barely 15 minutes away." You nod. Because what else are you going to do? Sit still and reflect. Exactly. You down the last of your broth, tip the bowl in silent gratitude, and head for Jian, still tethered to the hitching post. Eyes closed, in a state of absolute philosophical detachment. He opens one eye as you approach. "Just one more," you say. He exhales like you've asked him to personally rewrite the tax code. But he allows it. The road to the orchard is soft-packed and sunlit. The kind of trail that smells of fallen leaves, damp bark, and someone nearby cooking sweet bean paste. You pass a farmer walking backward behind a plow. You don't ask. It seems personal. The estate isn't large, but its tidy, neatly swept paths, trimmed hedges, and two carved lion dogs out front that look slightly startled by everything. A servant greets you at the gate, takes the message with a bow, and offers a small pouch in return. "You're to deliver this back to the sender," he says, lowering his voice. "Immediately, if possible." You blink. Of course. You're used to this now, messages answered before the ink dries. Couriers like you form the pulse of the Empire's veins, beating steadily across roads and fields, carrying secrets, complaints, love letters, and shopping lists. You return to town with the pouch, hand it off, and prepare to resume your half day of not working when someone calls your name. A familiar voice. You turn to find an older courier you haven't seen in months. Lay, the one with a lopsided hat and the laugh that sounds like a teapot boiling over. He's seated under a willow tree, chewing on a preserved apricot and waving you over like you owe him 10 dumplings. You join him, settle on the grass, and soon the conversation drifts toward root gossip, mule tricks, and whether or not Station Nakshwati really has a haunted inkstone. He tells you a story about a scroll that exploded into moths. You counter with one about a goose that stole your logbook. He laughs so hard he nearly swallows the apricot seed. Still doing the Western Circuit, he asks, "For now, still pretending your mule likes you every day." He grins. "You know, people think this job is all dust and saddle sores, and they're not wrong, but there's something about knowing exactly where you're going. Even if the road's got 3 names and one of them is wrong turn." You nod. You do know. Historians still argue whether Tang Dynasty couriers had a deeper cultural role beyond logistics. Some believe they were walking threads in the empire's social fabric, delivering not just messages, but memory. Others say that's romantic nonsense, and that most couriers just wanted dinner and a clean mat. You lean slightly toward the poetic view. As the afternoon sun stretches long across the rooftops, you and Lei part ways with the usual promise to meet again when the scrolls stop chasing us. You return to the post station, tuck your satchel onto its hook, and finally allow yourself to lie flat on the mat in the corner. Your muscles sigh, your eyelids droop, but your mind is still buzzing, gently, like a sleepy beehive. Just as you're about to drift off, a boy pokes his head through the doorway. "Messenger." You crack one eye open. Don't worry, it's not a scroll. He walks in, holding something small and wrapped in cloth. "This was left for you," he says, setting it down beside your mat, "by a monk. Said you'd understand." He leaves before you can ask which monk, or why, or what. You unwrap the cloth. Inside is a hand-carved token round, smooth, painted with a symbol you vaguely recognize from the temple near Pine Ridge. A blessing, a thank you, a promise. You don't know, but you place it beside your satchel, where it catches the last golden light of day. The sounds outside grow softer. The street's quiet. A bell rings in the distance, signaling evening prayers or dinner, or both. And for once, there's no scroll in your hand. No mule to saddle. No toll to argue. Just the weight of the day behind you, and the lightness of knowing it's done. You wake again. But this time, it's not the usual reluctant crack of dawn routine. It's quieter now, the kind of quiet that only happens when the whole world agrees to rest. Somewhere outside, a wind chime tinks once, like it's reminding you that it's still out there, still working, even if you're not. You sit up slowly. The mat beneath you has developed a personality overnight, equal parts lumpy, musty, and somehow judgmental. Your back creaks in polite protest. Your knees echo the sentiment, but there's no immediate pressure. No scroll burning a hole in your satchel. No dispatch clerk rattling off route names like a prayer to the gods of red ink and poor penmanship. For the first time in what feels like weeks, you might have time. So naturally, you spend it reorganizing your satchel. You start by laying everything out on the matte folded parchment, spare sealing wax, 2 emergency biscuits of questionable age, a worn ink stick, and a small scrap of paper with a doodle of a cat that someone possibly you slipped in weeks ago. You dust the bag out, pausing to remove a pebble that has somehow embedded itself in the lining like it's staking a claim. Then you refill it, with care. You even take a moment to polish your insignia, a small brass badge shaped like a windblown scroll. It gleams faintly in the lamplight. For a moment, you feel like the Empire is a little less chaotic. Then a loud crash sounds outside. You peek through the window. A cart has overturned, turnips everywhere. A very loud man is shouting at a very startled goat. Balance restored. You shake your head and step outside, satchel slung loosely over one shoulder. The air is warm already, with the first hints of summer creeping into the spring breeze. The sky overhead is a soft, forget-me-not blue. It smells like gingerbread and damp thatch. You walk. No mule today. Just your feet and the rhythm of the cobblestones under your worn soles. You pass the tea house, where a bard with 6 teeth and 12 opinions is mid-ballad. Something about a general who fell in love with his own reflection and accidentally declared war on a mirror. The crowd is small but polite. You continue on, passing the bakery where hot buns steam in bamboo baskets stacked like treasure chests. The baker nods. You nod back. A mutual agreement of carbs and survival. And then you find yourself near the edge of town, at the relay stables. Chenchin is there, of course, standing beside a pile of hay with the air of someone auditioning for a tragedy. You walk up slowly. He looks at you. You look back. Then he lowers his head and nudges your hand, which in mule language is basically a sonnet. You give him the last of your emergency biscuit, even though it might be older than your current assignment. He eats it anyway. You saddle him out of habit, tightening the straps, adjusting the worn blanket, checking the left stirrup where the leather's starting to fray. You both know it'll hold. Probably. Just as you're about to mount, someone calls your name again. It's not the station clerk this time. It's an unfamiliar voice, a woman, breathless from running, holding something tightly in both hands. She's younger, dressed in a faded scholar's robe, hair falling into her eyes. You meet her halfway. You're the messenger, she asks. I've been accused. She offers a scroll plain, unmarked, tied with twine so ordinary it looks almost suspicious. It's for my brother, she says. He's in Yanshui village. He left suddenly, and she hesitates, and I didn't get to say goodbye. You nod, accepting it gently, as if the scroll might bruise. No rush, she says. Just when you go next, you tuck it into your satchel, just above the cat doodle. Next time I pass through, you promise. Historians still argue how often messages like these made it to their destinations. Some records suggest thousands of letters never arrived, lost to weather, theft, or simple misplacement. Others say the courier network, for all its flaws, was built on the backs of stubborn riders who simply refused to fail. You prefer that version. Back on the main road now. You ride slowly. No deadline. No seal. Just a note in your bag from a sister who didn't get to say goodbye. The sky turns a brighter shade of blue as you climb a gentle hill just outside Huixi. Below, the fields unfold like a giant green map, stitched together by dirt trails and wandering goats. A shepherd waves, you wave back. Chen doesn't wave, but he does fart loudly, which is probably symbolic in some forgotten dialect. You reach the hill's crest and pause. No messages today. But still, you look. To the north, the shimmer of a distant river. To the east hills folded in morning fog. To the west, the path to Yanshui. Still days away, but not out of reach. You breathe in. You breathe out. Sometimes the road is more than just a way to get somewhere. Sometimes it's a quiet space between stories. You turn Xianxian back toward the village. There's always more to carry. Always another scroll. Even when there isn't. By midday, the quiet spell breaks as it always does. Wuxi fills with life again, bubbling up like a simmering pot. Market stalls bloom back to life. The percussion of wooden sandals tapping on stone mingling with the soft clatter of baskets and buckets and old men arguing about cabbage weights. You're caught in it briefly, a ripple in the current. You step into a small shop near the edge of the square. It's one of those catch-all places, brush pens, ink blocks, paper, scroll weights carved like frogs, all piled with beautiful indifference. The shopkeeper, a sleepy man with eyebrows like two tired moths, waves you in without even sitting up straight. Courier, he says. Usually, scroll for the herbalist, just arrived. Nobody else free. Of course. He hands it over a slim bundle wrapped in pale green cloth, tied with reed twine, sealed with wax, pressed by a stamp shaped like a chrysanthemum. The sender mentioned urgency. The shopkeeper adds vaguely. You nod, though urgency is a slippery word in courier circles. Sometimes it means war. Sometimes it means a lost recipe for medicinal dumplings. You head off toward the herbalist's quarters on foot, just a few blocks south, tucked behind a well that leaks gently into a moss-covered trough. The walk is pleasant, shaded by overhanging awnings and flowering vines that spill like gossip from second-story balconies. The herbalist is waiting outside, watering a row of potted ginger plants. She eyes the scroll in your hand, dries her fingers on her sleeve, and receives it with the air of someone who's been expecting bad news but hoping for good gossip. You're about to turn back when she stops you. Wait, she says, take this. She hands you a bundle wrapped in brown paper. It's warm. Bun filled with lotus seed paste. She explains, soft center, like you, I think. You blink. Is that a compliment? She shrugs. Try not to drop it. Back in the street, you unwrap the bun carefully. Take a bite. Soft, sweet, calming. Like if quiet had a flavor, you wander for a while, letting the day guide you instead of a scroll. Past a man repairing a fishing net in the middle of the road. Past a painted wall scrawled with someone's attempt at poetry. Past a dog snoozing on a stack of tiles who looks so peaceful. You lower your steps as you pass. You end up by the riverside, where a few boats rock gently at their moorings. Children skip stones. An old woman hangs herbs from a pole, humming a tune with no clear melody. You sit, not because you need to, just because it feels like the right time to sit. Xian Xian finds a patch of clover nearby and chews in contemplative silence. You both watch the river for a while. The water moves like it's thinking, the kind of movement that doesn't hurry. You've walked these roads for years, through rainstorms, through festivals, through surprise goose stampedes. And yet, days like this where nothing explodes, where no imperial seal throbs in your satchel like a drumbeat, feel more rare than thunder in winter. You reach into your bag, pull out a scrap of paper, and scribble a quick note. No scrolls, no screaming, just sweet buns and moving water. The empire survives. You fold it, tuck it next to the doodle of the cat. You never send these, but you like to imagine someone finds them one day, centuries from now, and wonders what kind of philosopher courier walked the roads of Tang China, with buns in one hand and sarcasm in the other. Historians might call you an anomaly, or just a functionary with a poetic streak. Both, probably. A bell rings from deeper in the village. You check the sky. Late afternoon now. Sun beginning its slow descent behind the hills. A few errands left to run if you want dinner. You rise, stretch your legs. Your knees creak like bamboo in a storm. You pat Xianxian's flank, and he blinks like a monk mid-nap. You pass the carp pond again, the tea house, the musician with a drum tied to his foot, and no rhythm to guide him. You smile, wave at a vendor selling rice crackers shaped like clouds. Back at the post station, there's another scroll waiting. Of course there is. There always is. But it's small, and the clerk shrugs. Tomorrow's problem, he says. You agree. For once, you hang your satchel on its hook, remove your boots, and settle on the mat without checking your route list. You close your eyes, and for the first time in a while, you don't replay the day like a checklist. Instead, you think about the lotus bun, the children at the river, the herbalist with her sarcastic pastry wisdom, and the quiet. You let the quiet in. Not the kind that feels like waiting, but the kind that feels like belonging. Evening deepens, folding Huixi in gentle layers of twilight and soft shadows. Lanterns blink to life one by one, like sleepy stars too stubborn to wait for nightfall. The narrow alleys glow with a honey-colored light, flickering and warm, painting the town in brushstrokes of amber and gold. You rise from your mat slowly, your joints unsure whether rest helped or made things worse. You stretch your arms, hear 3 distinct pops in your spine, and decide you're ready for one last walk. No scroll in hand, no mule in tow, just you, the cobblestones, and the rhythmic creak of your satchel, now mostly empty save for a scribbled note, a cat doodle, and a bundle of string you might never need, but keep just in case. You wander through the village as if seeing it for the first time. The lanterns sway gently above you, strung between buildings like offerings to the sky. Somewhere down the street, a man plays the erhu, its voice long and sad, stretching through the air like a sigh. The noodle vendor nods at you again. You return the gesture. He points at his pot, but you shake your head with a smile. Your belly is still full from the lotus bun and leftover rice crackers from breakfast. He laughs softly, as if amused that any courier could turn down second dinner. You pass a temple courtyard where a few monks light incense, their faces calm, shadows flickering across shaved heads. The air smells of sandalwood, ash, and something green and herbaceous you can't quite place. One monk glances up as you pass and gives a small nod, the kind that says, "We know you carry more than scrolls." You walk on. At the northern edge of town, the path opens up again. Beyond it, the dark outlines of distant hills stretch like sleeping beasts. The stars have fully emerged now, dozens of them scattered across a velvet sky, some blinking, others steady. The moon, just over half full, glows gently behind a veil of clouds. Shenshin waits near the fence by the stables. You approach him with your hands behind your back. "You're off duty," you whisper. He does not acknowledge this. You feed him a slice of dried apple you tucked in your pocket earlier. He accepts it with slow ceremony, then stares into the distance like a poet contemplating the end of a dynasty. You lean against the fence beside him, both of you gazing at the moonlit horizon. "I think," you say, "we're due for a different route." Shen blinks slowly. Approval, indifference. A slow blink of resignation. "You'll take it." Back at the station, the clerk's room is quiet. A candle still burns, guttering slightly as if unsure it wants to go on. You flip through the incoming message log out of habit. One name catches your eye. Not a noble, not a general, just a name you saw once before. Months ago, on a scroll you hand-delivered to a woman in a green robe who asked you not to read the address aloud. She sent something again. Same seal, same simple paper. A private message, probably nothing earth-shattering. But still there's something reassuring in the rhythm of it. Like hearing the same wind chime from a different house. Weeks later, you trace the seal with your thumb, then set it gently in the to-depart pile for tomorrow's runner. There's comfort in knowing the empire doesn't run only on orders and decrees, but on people writing to each other about tea, and plum syrup, and maybe asking how the weather's been near Pine Ridge. Historians rarely record these details, scrolls that shape kingdoms. Yes, battles, reforms, tax ledgers, absolutely. But the scroll you just touched, it probably just says, "The silkworms hatched early this year," and that means something, too. You leave the message stack where it is, close the ledger, and blow out the candle. Outside, Huixi has gone hushed. You walk slowly through the square again, under the watchful eye of lion dog statues that gleam faintly in the lantern glow. You pass the bench where two old men played Go earlier, their stones still scattered mid-game, the board, abandoned for now, waits patiently for tomorrow. You reach the sleeping quarters. Xian Xian is already settled near the stable, curled awkwardly but peacefully. You unroll your mat again, fluff the thinnest pillow in the province, and lie back. The roof beams creak in the night air. A cricket sings softly somewhere in the corner, and you, for once, feel no urgency. No scrolls, no whistles, no toll collectors demanding poems. Just the hum of a day well spent, a satchel lighter than usual, and the soft comfort of knowing that somewhere, someone is still waiting for a letter. Not with desperation, but with the quiet joy of connection. And you, the dusty-footed bridge between them, get to carry it. Night deepens. You lie still on the mat, arms folded behind your head, eyes half closed but not quite sleeping. The post station has gone quiet. No footsteps, no whispering clerks, just the gentle sway of a paper lantern near the door and the distant tap-tap of something a wind-drawn branch. A rope against a beam. Somewhere, an owl calls once. You shift slightly and stare at the ceiling, where the beams crisscross in dark wooden angles. You know every knot, every squeak of that timber. You've traced them with your eyes 100 times while drifting between waking and sleep. Tomorrow, the road begins again. Or maybe it won't. Maybe you'll rest another day. Clean your boots, refill your ink, or stitch the satchel's side pocket that's threatening to rip open. You've said that for weeks. Xian Xian, curled in his usual post-dinner collapse, snorts once in his sleep. Maybe he's dreaming of rice crackers, or revenge, or both. You smile faintly. Your legs ache, but not painfully. Just the familiar hum of work done. The scrolls are delivered, the pouch is nearly empty, and you're still breathing in rhythm with the steady, invisible pulse of the empire. You remember once asking a fellow courier what made the job worth it. She'd answered through a mouthful of sesame cake, the quiet between towns. That part where the road hums, and you feel like you're the only one who hears it. You didn't get it then, but you do now. Historians never argue about that part, 'cause they don't know about it. They'll read the records, trace the routes, admire the seals and maps, but they won't know what it feels like to walk into a village as the sky changes color, carrying someone's hope tied in twine. They won't know the weight of a love letter that smells like cloves and ink, or the way a farmer's face softens when you hand over a reply from a cousin he hasn't seen in 7 winters. They won't know about the tea, or the dumplings, or the lady who gave you a bun and called you soft, and that's okay. That's your story to carry. The candle guttering in the corner finally dies. You close your eyes. Not sleep yet, but something slower. Your mind wanders through the day in reverse. The scrolls, the bridge, the duck, the music, the woman with the apron full of herbs, the goose that may or may not have been blessed. You let it all wash through you like rain through cedar needles. You are not a hero. You are not famous. But you are the thread between stories, and the thread holds. The satchel rests beside you, empty, yes, but waiting. You smile again. And then, finally your thoughts dim like lanterns in the wind, and you drift. The road is far behind you now. No footsteps to follow, no path to trace, just the sound of the wind slipping through pine needles, the distant murmur of a sleeping village, and the soft, rhythmic breath of a mule, whose name only you know. You are warm, stretched across a mat that no longer feels like straw, but like cloud. The ache in your knees fades. The weight of the satchel dissolves. Even the whisper of the old scrolls seems quieter now, folded and resting. Outside, the stars burn gently, as if holding their breath. A lantern flickers. A dog sighs in its sleep, and all around you, the world settles not because it has stopped spinning, but because you finally stepped outside its noise. You remember the river, the pigeon, the sweet bun, the note you never sent, and none of it is urgent now. Nothing presses against your mind. No one needs anything. Not tonight. You let go of the reins in your thoughts, unclench the fist around your attention. You allow yourself the softness of stillness, the sweetness of silence, the sanctuary of being just a name with no destination for a while. You are here, and that is enough. Your breath slows, your limbs grow heavier, the world recedes like a tide, and in its place, sleep, full and quiet and yours.